Support the channel with a subscription. I will be pleased. The house was quiet, too quiet. Jason sat alone at the dining table, staring at the crumpled note in his hands. The words scrawled in his wife's familiar handwriting burned into his mind. Jason, I can't do this anymore. I found someone who makes me happy. Don't try to find me. It's over. Just hours earlier, Emily had kissed him goodbye before heading out for what she claimed was a work meeting. Now, she was gone, and the man she had left him for, a name she didn't even bother to include in the note, had stolen not only his wife but the life they had built together. Jason's chest tightened as he crumpled the paper even further, his mind reeling. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a hastily scribbled note. The shock was suffocating, but beneath it simmered a slow, searing rage. A shocking revelation. Jason didn't have to wait long to uncover the identity of the man Emily had left him for. Just a day after her departure, mutual friends began to reach out, their voices tinged with pity and thinly veiled curiosity. You didn't hear it from me, one of them said over the phone, but she's with Ryan. Jason froze. Ryan Matthews, the charming co-worker Emily had once dismissed as just a friend. The man who had attended their parties, shared their table, and even toasted their anniversary just months ago. The betrayal cut deeper than Jason thought possible. Emily hadn't just left him for another man. She had left him for someone who had been a part of their lives. The confrontation that never happened in the weeks following her departure, Emily remained unreachable. She blocked Jason's calls, ignored his emails, and even changed her social media profiles. It was as though she had erased him from her life entirely. Jason's first instinct was to confront Ryan directly, to demand answers. But as he imagined the smug look on Ryan's face, the thought sickened him. No, Jason realized. A confrontation would be too easy, too expected. If they thought they could walk away unscathed, they were wrong. A plan takes shape. Jason threw himself into his work, using his late nights at the office to distract himself from the gaping hole Emily had left behind. But even as he buried himself in spreadsheets and deadlines, the sting of her betrayal refused to fade. One night, as Jason scrolled through photos of their once happy life together, an idea began to take shape. It wasn't enough for Emily to regret her decision. She needed to feel the weight of what she had done. Jason wasn't just going to move on. He was going to rise above. The first steps. Jason's plan began with a complete transformation. He hired a personal trainer, revamped his wardrobe, and even enrolled in a public speaking class to sharpen his confidence. Over the next few months, he turned himself into someone unrecognizable, not just physically, but mentally. His coworkers noticed the change immediately. The once quiet Jason now commanded the room during meetings, his sharp wit and newfound charisma earning him respect and admiration. But this was just the beginning. Emily's new life with Ryan wasn't as idyllic as she had hoped. The initial thrill of their affair had worn off, and cracks began to appear in their relationship. Ryan, it turned out, was less charming behind closed doors, possessive, short-tempered, and unreliable. Emily found herself longing for the stability she had left behind. She began to wonder if she had made a mistake, but her pride kept her from reaching out to Jason. An unexpected encounter. It was at a mutual friends party that Emily saw Jason again for the first time. She had debated whether to attend, knowing there was a chance he would be there, but curiosity got the better of her. When Jason walked in, Emily barely recognized him. He was confident, composed, and, much to her dismay, accompanied by a stunning woman with a warm smile and an infectious laugh. Emily's heart sank as she watched him effortlessly mingle with the crowd, his easy charm drawing people in. The Jason she had left behind was gone, replaced by someone who seemed to have thrived in her absence. A moment of weakness. As the night wore on, Emily couldn't resist approaching Jason. She waited until he was alone, nursing a drink at the edge of the patio. Jason, she said softly, her voice wavering. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Emily. She hesitated, the words she had rehearsed all night suddenly escaping her. You look good. Jason raised an eyebrow. Thanks. Emily shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. Jason took a sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving hers. Sorry doesn't change what you did, he said evenly. But I appreciate you saying it. The coolness in his tone stung more than Emily expected. She opened her mouth to say more. But before she could, Jason's date appeared at his side, slipping her arm through his. Ready to go? She asked, her smile directed at Jason. Jason nodded. Yeah, let's head out. As Emily watched them leave, a sinking feeling settled in her chest. For the first time, she realized she might have lost more than she had gained. The world shifts that night. As Emily lay awake beside a snoring Ryan, she replayed the encounter in her mind. Jason had moved on, truly moved on. And for the first time, she regretted everything. But what Emily didn't know was that Jason's transformation was far from over. His next moves would shake her world in ways she couldn't imagine. Jason left the party with a sense of closure, but also with a renewed drive. Seeing Emily's reaction had confirmed what he already knew. She wasn't expecting him to rise above her betrayal. But Jason wasn't content to simply move on. He wanted to ensure that Emily and Ryan understood the gravity of their actions. The next morning, Jason sat at his desk, sketching out the next steps of his plan. If they thought the chapter was closed, they were sorely mistaken. Uncovering Ryan's secrets, Jason began his quiet investigation into Ryan's life. What he discovered fueled his resolve. Ryan wasn't just an overconfident flirt. He was a serial manipulator with a history of exploiting his relationships for personal gain. Through social media and conversations with mutual acquaintances, Jason pieced together a pattern. Ryan had been in and out of several relationships, each ending in financial disputes or accusations of dishonesty. His charm masked a darker nature, one that Emily was likely beginning to see. Jason hired a private investigator to dig deeper. Within weeks, the PI delivered a file filled with incriminating evidence, unpaid debts, questionable business dealings, and even a restraining order from a previous girlfriend. Perfect, Jason muttered, a grim smile spreading across his face. Turning the tables, Jason's next move was bold. He anonymously sent the incriminating file to Emily, along with a note. The truth about the man you left me for. Are you still sure he was worth it? He didn't expect an immediate response, but it didn't matter. The seed of doubt had been planted. Emily's realization the effect on Emily was immediate. When she opened the envelope and saw the contents, her stomach dropped. She had suspected that Ryan wasn't as perfect as he appeared, but the extent of his duplicity was staggering. As she confronted Ryan that evening, his response only confirmed her fears. That's all in the past, he said dismissively, his tone irritated. Why are you even bringing this up? Because it matters. Emily shot back. I left everything for you. And now I find out you've been lying to me? Ryan's face hardened. You didn't leave for me, Emily. You left because you weren't happy. Don't put this on me. The argument escalated, and by the end of the night, Emily found herself questioning everything. Jason's strategic moves. Meanwhile, Jason was making moves to secure his own future. He accepted a promotion at work, one that came with a higher salary and more visibility within the company. His colleagues, impressed by his newfound confidence and professionalism, rallied around him. Jason also began hosting social events, inviting friends and colleagues to his newly renovated home. The house, once filled with memories of Emily, now reflected his own style and success. At each event, Jason's guests couldn't help but notice the change in him. You're like a completely different person, one friend remarked. Jason smiled. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. The turning point. One afternoon, Jason received an unexpected text from Emily. Can we talk? I need to explain. Jason hesitated. He had anticipated this moment, but wasn't sure how to approach it. After a brief pause, he replied, Meet me at the park. 7 p.m. When Emily arrived, she looked tired and unsure of herself, a stark contrast to the confident woman she had once been. Jason, she began, her voice faltering. I don't even know where to start. Start with the truth, Jason said evenly. Emily nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I made a mistake. she admitted. I thought leaving you was the right thing to do, but I didn't realize how much I was giving up. Ryan, he's not who I thought he was. Jason raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. Really? What gave it away? The lies? The debts? Or the fact that he's done this to other women before you? Emily's jaw dropped. You knew? I make it a point to know, Jason replied coldly. You may have blindsided me, but I've caught up now. The regret sets in. Emily broke down, her tears flowing freely. I don't know how to fix this, she sobbed. I left the best thing in my life for a man who doesn't care about me. Jason watched her for a moment, his emotions a mix of satisfaction and pity. You can't fix it, Emily, he said quietly. Some choices can't be undone. Ryan's downfall. As Emily tried to salvage what was left of her relationship with Ryan, Jason unleashed the final phase of his plan. He anonymously sent the incriminating file to Ryan's current employer, ensuring that his shady dealings came to light. Within days, Ryan was fired, his reputation in tatters. His financial troubles escalated, and soon, even Emily was forced to confront the reality of their relationship. One evening, she packed her bags and left Ryan's apartment, her dreams of a new life with him shattered. Jason's triumph. Word of Ryan's downfall spread quickly, and those who had doubted Jason began to see him in a new light. He wasn't just a man scorned. He was a man who had risen from the ashes of betrayal to reclaim his life. At his next social gathering, Jason stood by the fireplace, surrounded by friends and colleagues. As he raised his glass for a toast, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. To new beginnings, he said, his voice steady. To second chances, a friend added, smiling. Jason nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. Emily's regret and Ryan's downfall were satisfying, but the real victory was his transformation. Jason's life seemed to be on an upward trajectory. With Ryan's downfall and Emily's regret weighing heavy on her, he had reclaimed not just his dignity but also his sense of purpose. He had become a man transformed, confident, respected, and in control. Yet, as the dust settled, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something remained unresolved. It wasn't until he received an unmarked envelope in his mailbox that he realized the story was far from over. The letter that changed everything. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note and a photograph. The note read, "You think you've won, Jason, but the truth isn't as simple as you believe. Meet me at the corner of Pine and Maple at 8 p.m. if you want answers. Come alone." The photograph showed Emily and Ryan together in what appeared to be a hotel room. But it wasn't the image itself that shocked Jason. It was the date stamp. The photo was taken 6 months before Emily left him. Jason clenched his fists, the rage bubbling to the surface once more. The timeline of her betrayal was worse than he had thought. Whoever sent the note knew something, and Jason was determined to find out what it was. A risky meeting that evening, Jason drove to the designated meeting spot, his nerves on edge. The corner of Pine and Maple was dimly lit, the street deserted except for a shadowy figure leaning against a lamppost. As Jason approached, the figure stepped forward, a woman in her late 30s with sharp features and an air of confidence. "Jason Carter," she said, her voice low and steady. "I've been waiting for you." "Who are you?" Jason asked, his tone cautious. "Call me Monica," she replied. "I was Ryan's girlfriend before Emily, and I have some things you need to know." The shocking revelation. Monica wasted no time, pulling out her phone to show Jason a series of messages and photos. "Ryan has a pattern," she explained. "He targets women in stable relationships, convinces them to leave their partners, and uses them until they're no longer useful." Jason's stomach churned as he scrolled through the evidence. It was a playbook. Messages identical to the ones Emily had likely received, promises of a better life, and manipulative tactics designed to create distance between his targets and their spouses. "But why are you telling me this?" Jason asked, his voice edged with suspicion. "Because Ryan doesn't just destroy relationships," Monica said. "He destroys lives. And I think Emily was more than just another conquest for him. I think she's in danger." Emily's desperation. As Jason processed Monica's words, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. "Jason, please call me. It's important." Ignoring Monica's warning to tread carefully, Jason called Emily. Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. "Jason, I need your help," she said. "Ryan's not who I thought he was. He's dangerous." Jason's grip tightened on the phone. "What's going on?" Emily hesitated before responding. "I tried to leave him, but he won't let me. He's been following me, showing up at my work. I'm scared, Jason." A difficult choice. Jason's first instinct was to hang up. Emily had made her bed, and she should lie in it. But as he glanced at Monica, who was watching him intently, he felt a pang of guilt. "If you're in danger, go to the police," Jason said curtly. "I can't," Emily replied, her voice breaking. "Ryan has things on me. Things that could ruin me." Jason sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Where are you?" Emily gave him her location, a small motel on the outskirts of town. Against his better judgment, Jason agreed to meet her. Confronting the past, when Jason arrived at the motel, he found Emily sitting on the edge of the bed, her face pale and tear-streaked. She looked up as he entered, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and shame. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Jason remained standing, his arms crossed. "Start talking." Emily took a deep breath. "Ryan isn't who he pretends to be. He's been using me, just like he used Monica and the others. When I found out about his debts and his lies, I told him I was leaving. That's when he started threatening me." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Threatening you how?" "He said if I left, he'd expose things, private things, about our relationship," Emily said, her voice trembling. "He also said he'd hurt me." A new plan. Jason's anger flared, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" Emily looked away. "Because I didn't think you'd care. After everything I did, I didn't think you'd want to help me." Jason sighed, the conflict within him growing. He wanted to walk away, to let Emily deal with the mess she had created. But something in her voice, the genuine fear, kept him rooted in place. "Fine," he said finally. "I'll help you. But once this is over, you're on your own." The tables turn again as Jason and Emily began to strategize. Jason realized that Ryan's downfall wasn't complete. The evidence he had leaked was damaging, but it hadn't destroyed Ryan completely. Monica had warned Jason about Ryan's ability to bounce back, and now it was clear that Ryan was trying to regain control, starting with Emily. But this time, Jason wouldn't let him. The setup. Jason reached out to Monica, who reluctantly agreed to help. Together, they devised a plan to confront Ryan and expose him once and for all. "Are you sure about this?" Monica asked as they finalized the details. Jason nodded, his determination unwavering. "He took everything from me. It's time I return the favor." Jason and Monica finalized their plan, and the stage was set for a confrontation that would expose Ryan's manipulations once and for all. Emily, though hesitant, agreed to play her part, recognizing that it was her best chance to escape Ryan's grasp. The meeting place was a bar on the outskirts of town, neutral ground, crowded enough to avoid immediate suspicion but secluded enough to execute their plan. Jason arrived first, taking a seat at the bar where he could see the entire room. Monica and Emily sat at a nearby table, their nervous glances betraying the tension of the moment. Ryan walked in minutes later, his smug confidence radiating as he scanned the room and spotted Emily. The encounter begins. Ryan approached Emily with a smile that Jason found infuriatingly insincere. "Emily," he said smoothly, sliding into the seat across from her. "I was wondering when you'd come to your senses." Emily flinched but held her ground. "I didn't come to make amends, Ryan," she said firmly. "I came to talk." Ryan leaned back, his smile fading slightly. "Talk about what?" "About this," Emily said, sliding a folder across the table. Ryan opened it, his expression darkening as he saw the contents. Incriminating photos, financial records, and evidence of his manipulative patterns. "Where did you get this?" he hissed, his eyes narrowing. "That's not important," Emily replied, her voice steady. "What matters is that it's over, Ryan. You're not going to hurt me or anyone else ever again." Jason steps in before Ryan could respond. Jason stood and walked over to the table. The surprise on Ryan's face was almost worth the months of pain Jason had endured. "You," Ryan spat, rising to his feet. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Making sure you get what you deserve," Jason said calmly. Ryan's expression shifted from anger to unease as Jason pulled out his phone and pressed a button. A recording of their conversation began to play, Ryan's threats and manipulations laid bare for anyone to hear. "You've been sloppy, Ryan," Jason said, his tone icy. "And now, everyone's going to know exactly who you are." The escalation Ryan's composure cracked. "You think you can ruin me?" he sneered. "I've bounced back from worse. You're nothing but a bitter ex-husband trying to play the hero." Jason's lips curled into a grim smile. "This isn't about being a hero. It's about justice." As Ryan reached for the folder, Monica stood and intercepted him. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," she said coolly. "The authorities already have copies of everything in that folder. One wrong move, and you're finished." Ryan froze, his eyes darting between Monica, Emily, and Jason. For the first time, the predator looked cornered. "The breaking point, I can fix this," Ryan said, his tone shifting to desperation. "Emily, you don't want to do this. We had something special. Don't let them ruin it." Emily shook her head, her voice trembling but resolute. "What we had wasn't special, Ryan. It was a lie. And I'm done living in your lies." Ryan's mask of charm crumbled entirely. He lunged for Emily, but Jason stepped between them, shoving him back into his seat. "That's enough," Jason growled. "You don't get to intimidate her anymore." The bar fell silent, patrons turning to watch the commotion. Jason could feel the weight of their stares, but he didn't care. The arrival of the police moments later, two plainclothes officers entered the bar, their badges glinting under the dim lights. They approached the table, their expressions unreadable. "Ryan Matthews?" one of them said. Ryan looked up, his face pale. "What is this?" "You're under arrest for fraud, harassment, and several other charges," the officer replied. "You have the right to remain silent." As the officers cuffed him, Ryan turned to Jason, his eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed. Jason didn't flinch. "Oh, it's over," he said firmly. Emily's regret after Ryan was escorted out. Emily turned to Jason, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said softly. Jason's expression was unreadable. "I didn't do it for you," he said, his tone measured. "I did it because it was the right thing to do." Emily nodded, her shoulders slumping under the weight of her guilt. "I know I can't undo what I did, Jason, but I hope one day you can forgive me." Jason didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at her for a long moment before saying, "You need to forgive yourself first." A new chapter as Emily left the bar. Jason turned to Monica. "You were right about him," he said. Monica smiled faintly. "I've been where you are, Jason. It's not easy to move forward after something like this, but you've got the strength to do it." Jason nodded, a sense of closure settling over him. For the first time in months, he felt like the weight of betrayal had been lifted. With Ryan arrested and Emily's regret hanging like a shadow, Jason found himself at a crossroads. For months, he had been consumed by anger and a need for justice. Now, with the storm behind him, he was left with a question he hadn't dared to confront. What next? The answer didn't come immediately. Jason threw himself into work, his colleagues praising his sharp focus and dedication. But the emptiness lingered. The life he had envisioned with Emily was gone, replaced by a future he had yet to define. A surprising opportunity one afternoon, Jason received an unexpected email from a local charity he had supported in the past. They were hosting a fundraiser for victims of fraud and domestic abuse, two causes that resonated deeply with him after his experience with Ryan and Emily. The email included an invitation to join the event's planning committee. Jason hesitated, unsure if he was ready to take on such a personal challenge. But something about the opportunity felt right. He replied with a simple, "Count me in." Finding purpose, the committee meetings became a lifeline for Jason. Surrounded by people who had also faced betrayal and hardship, he began to feel a sense of connection and purpose. One member of the group, a woman named Lila, stood out with her easy laugh and empathetic nature. Lila had her own story. Years ago, she had left an abusive relationship and rebuilt her life from scratch. Her resilience was inspiring, and Jason found himself drawn to her warmth and optimism. During a late-night brainstorming session for the fundraiser, Lila turned to Jason and said, "You know, you're pretty good at this." Jason chuckled. "At what?" "At making something good come out of a bad situation," she said, her smile genuine. Emily's letter one evening. As Jason sifted through paperwork for the fundraiser, he found an envelope on his doorstep. The handwriting was unmistakable. Emily. He debated whether to open it, the memories of her betrayal still fresh. But curiosity won out. Inside was a letter, handwritten and heartfelt. Asterisk, Jason. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to say this. I've spent every day since our last conversation thinking about the pain I caused you. What I did was selfish, cruel, and unforgivable. Ryan's actions opened my eyes to how blind I had been. He used me, just as he used others, and I let myself fall for his lies because it was easier than facing the truth about myself. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm working to be better. I've started therapy, and I'm trying to rebuild my life. I owe that to you, for showing me the strength it takes to face the truth. Thank you for everything you did, even when I didn't deserve it. You'll always have my gratitude. Emily. Asterisk, a weight lifted. Jason read the letter twice, his emotions a mix of relief and sorrow. Emily's words didn't erase the past, but they offered a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed. He folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step toward letting go. The fundraiser's success. The night of the fundraiser arrived, and the event was a resounding success. Guests filled the venue, bidding on auction items and donating generously to the cause. Jason's speech about overcoming betrayal and finding purpose drew a standing ovation, his vulnerability resonating with the audience. Lila approached him afterward, her eyes shining. "That was incredible," she said. Jason smiled, the warmth of her praise settling over him. "It felt good to share my story," he admitted. "Good," Lila said, nudging his shoulder playfully, "because it's a story worth sharing." A new connection as the guests trickled out and the cleanup began. Jason and Lila found themselves alone on the balcony, the city lights twinkling in the distance. "You've come a long way," Lila said, leaning against the railing. "So have you," Jason replied. Lila turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about what might have been? If things had gone differently with Emily?" Jason considered the question before shaking his head. "I used to. But now, I think everything happened for a reason. It brought me here." Lila smiled, a hint of something deeper in her gaze. "I like the person it brought you to." Jason's heart quickened, but he didn't rush the moment. Instead, he simply smiled back, feeling for the first time in a long while that he was exactly where he was meant to be. A final reflection later that night. As Jason walked into his now warm and inviting home, he paused to look at his reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at him was different, stronger, wiser, and at peace with the choices that had led him here. The betrayal that had once consumed him was no longer a burden. It was a stepping stone, a reminder of the resilience that lay within him. Jason wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. Months passed, and Jason settled into a life that felt like his own again. The pain of betrayal had dulled into a distant memory, replaced by a sense of purpose and new connections. His work with the charity continued, and his friendship with Lila deepened, blossoming into something neither had anticipated. But life, as Jason had learned, always had another twist waiting. A letter from a stranger one morning. Jason found another envelope on his doorstep. This one bore no name, just his address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed and concise. Asterisk, Mr. Carter, I've been following your story and your work with the charity. I believe you've experienced something few people can truly understand: betrayal, recovery, and rebuilding. I'm reaching out because I think you're the right person to help others navigate similar journeys. I'd like to discuss an opportunity to share your story on a larger platform. If you're interested, meet me at the Riverview Cafe tomorrow at noon. Sincerely, Thomas Graham. Jason reread the letter, skepticism warring with curiosity. The name didn't ring a bell, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to reopen old wounds by sharing his story publicly. But something about the letter intrigued him. The meeting the next day, Jason arrived at the Riverview Cafe, scanning the room for the mysterious Thomas Graham. He spotted a man in his late 50s seated by the window, a polished appearance, a warm smile, and an air of confidence. "Mr. Carter," Thomas said, standing to shake Jason's hand. "Thank you for coming." Jason sat down, his expression guarded. "You have my attention. What's this about?" Thomas leaned forward, his tone earnest. "I'm a producer working on a documentary series about resilience and recovery. I've read about your work with the charity, and I think your story could inspire millions." Jason frowned. "Why me?" "Because you didn't just survive betrayal. You turned it into something meaningful," Thomas replied. "That kind of transformation is rare, and it's exactly what people need to see right now." A difficult decision. Jason left the meeting with a whirlwind of emotions. The idea of sharing his story on such a public scale was daunting, but it was also an opportunity to help others. That evening, he shared the offer with Lila over dinner. "What do you think?" Jason asked, swirling his glass of wine nervously. Lila smiled thoughtfully. "I think your story is powerful. If you're willing to share it, you could change lives. But only if it feels right for you." Jason nodded, her words resonating. "I'll think about it." The decision to share. After days of reflection, Jason decided to move forward with the project. He met with Thomas again, outlining the boundaries he needed to feel comfortable sharing his experience. To his relief, Thomas was understanding and eager to collaborate. The filming process was cathartic in ways Jason hadn't anticipated. Revisiting the pain of Emily's betrayal and the anger toward Ryan brought closure he hadn't realized he still needed. But it wasn't just about the past. Jason also shared his journey of growth, the charity work, the new relationships, and the lessons he had learned about resilience and self-worth. The premiere months later, the documentary aired on a popular streaming platform. Jason braced himself for the public's reaction, unsure of what to expect. To his surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Messages poured in from viewers who saw themselves in his story, thanking him for giving them hope. The charity saw a surge in donations, and Jason was invited to speak at events and workshops. Even Emily reached out, her message brief but heartfelt. "Thank you for sharing your story. It reminded me of what I lost, and what I still need to work on." A life rebuilt through it all, Jason's relationship with Lila continued to flourish. They supported each other through the highs and lows, finding joy in the simple moments and strength in their shared values. One evening, as they sat on the patio of Jason's home, Lila turned to him with a smile. "You know," she said, "if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here with you, I wouldn't have believed them." Jason chuckled. "Same here. But I'm glad we found each other." Lila's expression grew serious. "You've come a long way, Jason, and I'm proud of you." Jason reached for her hand, his heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you." A thought-provoking ending. As Jason reflected on the twists and turns that had brought him to this moment, he realized that life's challenges had shaped him in ways he never expected. The pain of betrayal had been real, but so was the strength he had found in its aftermath. For the first time in years, Jason felt not just content but hopeful, ready for whatever came next. The listener's question. The story closes with a question to the audience. When life throws you its greatest challenges, how will you choose to respond? Will you let it break you, or build you into someone stronger?